Good morning, everybody. My name's Don. Thanks for watching my channel. I was trying to think back on a tournament that I fished years ago. Some of you here in Florida, South Florida, might remember, I guess it's been about 20 years ago, maybe 2003, 2004. ESPN, at that time, I believe they owned Bass Angler Sportsman Society. And one of the things that they did was they came up with what they called the weekend bass tournament series. Uh, they were going to hold these tournaments. I think there were going to be 3 or 4 different tournaments that they were going to hold on Lake Okeechobee, and it was pretty exciting because it was going to be. It wasn't really a pro event. It wasn't really a national event, but they were going to televise it and expected a pretty good turnout. The whole idea, the concept behind it, was to create a tournament circuit for weekend anglers, for guys like me that were working at the time that really couldn't join the pro tour without giving up our full-time jobs. So I was pretty excited about it. I wanted to fish it, and I had a relatively new boat. I guess I'd had it maybe a year. It was the 35th anniversary Ranger. So it must have been 2003, 2004, maybe. Anyway, at the time, I actually had a fishing tackle store. And it was a pretty good sized store. Kept me really busy between that and uh, building custom rods, repairing fishing rods, and doing guide work, taking folks out on guide trips. I was pretty busy, but the idea of fishing a tournament down on one of my favorite lakes, Lake Okeechobee, was pretty appealing. And because I had been fishing quite a few tournaments at that time, I just thought it'd be a great opportunity to get out there and see what I could do. It was supposed to be a very large field. They were talking about, somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 boats, which would be, a couple hundred anglers. So, so I signed up for it. I don't even remember what it cost. And it was a boater, non-boater tournament. So if you wanted to fish the tournament as a boater, obviously it costs a little bit more, but you were only competing against the boaters. Uh, Non-boaters could fish the tournament, and they could pay a lesser amount, but again, they were only competing against the non-boaters. Anyway, I signed up, and the way it worked, you had to go down the night before to hear them, talk for half an hour, and kind of run through the rules, but more importantly, to select the partners. So I drew a guy from up north. I don't remember his name. And believe me, buddy, if you're watching this, I still feel for you. But anyway, I drew a guy, nice guy, and we met out in the parking lot. We talked a little bit about how we'd meet in the morning, and and I left. It was probably 10 o'clock. I don't know, 9:30, and headed back home. And it's from where this meeting was held, it's better than an hour, maybe an hour and 20-minute drive. It's pretty much a straight shot, but I live about 45 minutes north of the lake. And when the meeting was held, I think it was held down in Clewiston. So I was maybe an hour and a half from home, straight up Route 27. So I head for home, and I get maybe halfway home, and I see the red lights and the sirens, and so I stop, and I'm about 10th in line on the road behind a number of big trucks. Can't really see what's going on. So after about 5 or 10 minutes, I got out of my truck and just walked up to see what the hell was going on, and turned out that a large truck, had somehow hit a car head on, and the truck and car were they were all over the road. In fact, they were so far spread out that you couldn't even drive in the grass around them. And so we were stuck. And we sat there and we sat there. And I watched them bring more cop cars, a couple more ambulances. Um, they even brought a helicopter that landed on the road. But the clock was ticking. And I mean, I just, I was starting to think I might as well give up and just take a nap because I'm going to be here all night. And of course, I was worried because I had to get home, I had to get my boat, and I had to turn around and come back. So uh, I sat there and I sat there, and finally they got one lane cleared, and I was able to head north. Um, I got home. It was probably, I don't know, 1 o'clock, 1:30. Was already tired. I'd worked all day. In fact, I think I had a guide trip that day on Lake Istapoca, but I was tired. So I, went in and I hooked up the boat. I like to hook it up the night before because then I'm less likely to forget something. But I hooked up the boat and got all my gear ready and, did kind of a quick check of everything. I knew I had filled the gas tank, so I'd filled it on my way home from the guide trip that day. So I was in pretty good shape. The boat was maybe a year old. Didn't expect any problems with the boat. And, I went in and I didn't even go to bed. I just sat down in my favorite chair and dozed off for maybe an hour, hour and a half. Got back up, jumped in the truck, headed down to the lake. Got there, good time. Mess was all cleaned up on the road by the time I drove back through. You could see a few remnants, a couple of fenders laying on the side of the road, but other than that, no real indication that anything had happened the night before. So I met up with my partner. We get the boat in the water, and I, waited for my turn. I don't even remember if I was, in the first flight or uh, I don't even remember. I just remember we eventually were off and we were fishing. And because this tournament started kind of on the south, I guess it'd be the south western shore out of Clewiston. Uh, the spot I wanted to go to was up in the north end, and it was a nice little area that I had fished maybe 2 or 3 days earlier, and I had really gotten into a lot of fish. It wasn't a guide trip. I was just down there pre-fishing for the tournament, but I had found a lot of fish, and after I'd caught a few, kind of backed off the area, thinking this would be one of the spots I'd go to for the ESPN tournament. So we ran up the lake. Probably took us, I don't know, maybe a half an hour to get up there, maybe longer. And my partner, I could see he was getting nervous. He kept looking at his watch and, kind of wondering where the hell we were going. And, as the boater or, uh, uh, I guess, captain of the boat, whatever you want to call it, the pro side, a lot of times they call them pro and amateur. Whatever. I had complete control over the boat. So, he didn't really have any say in where we were going to go. It was all up to me. So I headed up to this spot, found it, didn't have too much trouble finding it. And, for the most part, most anglers would have driven right by it because it was just a cutout back in the reeds. Didn't look like much. And really, unless you'd gone through this opening back to it, you'd have never found it. You'd have never known it was there. But we went back in and we immediately started catching fish. I mean, we were catching fish after fish, and we were filling up the live well, and we started culling, and we culled, and we culled. And if you don't know what culling means, it just means you're catching bigger fish and getting rid of the smaller fish that are in the live well. And finally, things slowed down a little bit, but it almost seemed like bigger fish were moving in. And we continued to fish, and my partner was just ecstatic. Uh, he couldn't believe, the fishing. He said he'd only fished Lake Okeechobee a couple of times, but he'd never run into fish like this. And and this went on till probably I don't even remember. I just remember it was maybe 12, 1 o'clock, maybe a little later. I don't remember what time the tournament ended, but whatever time it was, I knew I had right around 25 pounds. And I'm guessing that, based on what I'd seen him catch, he probably wasn't too far behind, probably in the 20s anyway. So it's kind of slowed down a little bit. The sun was coming out pretty bright, it was getting pretty hot. And I knew we had a pretty good drive going back. And the wind had picked up and it was coming up from the south. So I knew it would be a fairly rough ride going back. Uh, and because I didn't want to take any chance of coming in late, I finally suggested maybe at 1 o'clock, 1:30, I finally suggested, why don't we just head on back? I mean, we had been catching fish for the last hour, but none that were bigger than the ones we already had. So it didn't seem like we were going to increase our weight to any extent. And, with 25 pounds, I figured I might not win it, but I certainly would be getting a check. So we pulled out of this shallow area. We got back out onto the lake. And at the time, the lake was relatively high. So there was no concern about, hitting something with a motor or anything else. So I was running fairly close to the shore, at least keeping it in sight. We're running down the lake. We're going maybe 40 mile an hour. There was no need to rush. I had plenty of time, and just trying to keep it comfortable. And and after we had traveled maybe I don't know 2 or 3 miles, the motor quit. It just quit, just like it was out of gas. Like, God damn, what the hell? What's going on? And I told my partner, I said, he immediately thought we were out of gas. And he said, there's no way. And I pointed to the gas gauge. I said, I got 2 tanks on this boat, and they're both full, so we got plenty of gas. So we're looking around. I'm trying different things. I try to start it, it won't start. And finally, he says, "Are you a mechanic?" And I said, "No." I said, "Unfortunately, I'm one of those guys that, whether it's a car or the boat, if I turn the key, if it doesn't start, it's broke. So I go find somebody that knows this kind of stuff." So, we did the same thing I would do if I had, trouble with a truck. If I had trouble with a truck, I pop the hood and act like I know what I'm doing. Well, when you're out there in an outboard motor or in a boat with an outboard motor, you're going to take the shroud off. You're going to take the hood off the motor. And so I did. And it's huge, on these big outboards. It's that big, a big shroud. So I took it off, set it in the front of the boat, and I'm looking around at everything, and so is he. We're trying to figure out, you kind of touch a few things. It's like, we don't know what the hell we're doing. So again, I went back, sat in the driver's seat, cranked it over, tried to crank it over, wouldn't crank, wouldn't go, nothing. I'm like, what the hell? This is a new boat. I mean, I've only had this boat for a year or so, and we're looking at everything. Cannot figure it out. And this guy says, "Do you have oil?" I look over, and well, there's, had an oil canister. Canisters are white, uh, but they're pretty easy to see. And I looked down. I said, "Well, no, it's full. It's 3/4 of the way full." And we kept looking around for this and looking around. Finally, we just gave up. Here we are bobbing around in the middle of the lake, and time is moving on. So uh, we're talking about different things. I don't think I had a cell phone back in those days. I don't remember, but 2003, 2004. I don't know. Did we have cell phones back then? If we did, I'm not sure they would have worked on Okeechobee in the middle of the lake, but we obviously didn't have them with us if they were around. And so we just sat there and kind of bobbed around, and I'm trying to figure out, what can we do? If I could flag somebody down, they could tow us back in. And I think, according to the rules, I think they could actually take our fish back. I don't remember. And then I tried to think, well, I've got 5 fish. He's got 5 fish. How are we going to get these fish all in one live well if the other guy's got fish? About that time, you know, I got up and I thought, I'm just going to walk around a little bit and see if I can see anything else that might be suspicious. I'm looking at everything, and finally I reached down for the oil container, and I just was going to pop the lid off of it. And when I did, I noticed it was really light. And I thought, what the hell? It's full. I took the lid off. It's empty. The oil is gone. No oil. That was our problem. And then I thought I remembered that there was something in the motor itself that actually held a little bit of oil. And I looked, and I think I saw a little canister, and it was empty too. And I thought, oh my God, I'm out of oil. I can't believe it. When I had looked at the motor, I had seen on the white side of the oil container, I had seen that the oil appeared to be full, but it wasn't. It was actually stained to make it look full. So, obviously I was pretty upset, couldn't believe it. And of course, first question in my mind and in my partner's mind was, don't you have some oil with you? Well, funny story. In the past, I always carried oil. I always carried an extra gallon of oil. Unfortunately, in the boat I had prior to this one, I had had a gallon of oil and it leaked and made one hell of a mess in my boat. So in this new boat, I didn't carry any oil. And, much to my dismay, we were now in a position that motor was not going to start because it had no oil. So we started flagging down people, waving at them. Of course, everybody thought we were just waving, and they waved back. Long story short, we finally, guy stopped. He had some oil with him. He gave me a quart of oil, and we put some oil in, and he showed me how to prime it a little bit. Got the motor started, and drove in. We were probably 30 minutes late, maybe 40 minutes. In fact, I think, if I remember right, the weigh-in was over. And, obviously my partner and I were both pretty upset, my partner especially. And we ended up, we bagged up our fish and we walked up, and they were still there. They were still had the scales out. Told them what happened, and, that we were just curious, wanted to get our fish weighed. And they were gracious enough to weigh our fish anyway. Turned out I had close to 27 pounds. My partner had, I think, 22 or 23 pounds. I think I would have, if I remember right, I think I would have finished second or third, but pretty high up. And my partner on the amateur side, on the non-boater side, would have won. So, we didn't share a whole lot of good thoughts before we parted. It was probably one of the worst tournaments I ever fished in terms of results. One of the best tournaments I ever fished in terms of the fish we caught. But it just goes to show you that if something can go wrong, it will. And no matter how good you check that boat, no matter how many times you look things over, there's always one little thing you might miss. And I sure missed that one. So anyway, I ended up, I think I fished the next tournament. I think I fished all 3 of them or all 4 of them. Didn't do nearly as well. Never cashed a check in the other three. And as luck would have it, I managed to catch fish in all three, just couldn't get enough to get into the top 10 or whatever it was they were paying off checks. And never had a problem with the boat. The boat ran like a top, had plenty of oil, plenty of gas. But, that's what it's all about. You learn from experience. That was one of the toughest tournaments ever. So if you were down in this area 20 years ago, you might remember that tournament. And if you fished it, uh, you might remember seeing me and my partner coming in late, carrying bags of fish, and being disqualified. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the story. It's all true. It was a real sad day for me. Uh, Sad day in a way, but a great day of fishing. So anyway, thanks for watching my video, and I hope you have a great day.